Agentic AI is one of the most talked about ideas in enterprise AI today. So literally everyone is looking to build agents or they're already building agents as we speak. But there are very few people or who are very clear about what problems agents should solve or how to make them work reliably at the scale of the company. That's exactly what we are getting into today. Joining me is Mr. Sudhanshu Hate, Principal AI at Amazon Web Services. With over 27 years of experience building large-scale technology platforms, Sudhanshu has worked at intersection of architecture, problem solving, execution, and much more. He enjoys tackling complex first-time challenges and helping turn ideas into systems that work reliably at scale. Sudhanshu, welcome to GydeBites. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Prasanna. Really, it's my pleasure to be on this forum and talking to you.
All right. So, Sudhanshu, let's get started quickly. Firstly, there is the confusion amongst a lot of people that how agentic AI systems are fundamentally different from the traditional system. So we can start with that.
Okay. So, typically, traditional software architecture and the agentic AI systems differ in the primarily how the agentic AI system brings the intelligence. Agentic AI systems are primarily based and driven through the brain, whereas traditional systems are a lot more rule-based and coded systems that are working towards deterministic output, whereas agentic systems being LLM powered, LLM is primarily large language models, and they help you drive lot of non-deterministic and intelligence-based workflows.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think the fundamental difference that you are pointing out is that because of these LLMs have these uh, we have these intelligent options that can be passed on to the system and that can be provided as prompts or provided as options and so on. Uh, but one thing that comes into everyone's mind, every enterprise has a lot of data with them, either databases, either through various systems and so on. So how do these agents actually raise knowledge which is already there in the system?
Okay, so first thing, since agents are powered by LLM, a lot of knowledge and intelligence comes from the LLM. And then there is obviously knowledge that exists outside of these LLMs, that is within enterprise or on the internet, and so on and so forth. And typically, for fulfilling any use case or a business scenario, you need a combination of intelligence plus real time data, and out that's where the data that is available within the system, either in the form of databases or in the form of documents or APIs, provide you the necessary information in the real time or near real time, and helps you stitch together with your context or your knowledge that exists within LLM and serve the end customer or end user.
Yeah, and I think the context that is getting passed to LLM, that is becoming another big topic in today's world about the memory and exact data context, how it is getting passed. Uh, One more question or one more fear that lies today with any business, any company, enterprise trying to start these initiatives is there are a lot of reports that 95% of AI projects are failing. There is famous report from MIT, recent report from McKinsey, and so on. So, how do you think organizations should scale these AI initiatives from pilots to production? I'm sure pilots almost everyone is doing these days, but taking it to production is where the challenge and struggle is.
Correct. Prasanna, what happens is whenever new technology comes up, everybody wants to put their hand on and try it out, right? And that's what has happened with agents over the last 1 year, where a lot of organizations have tried, and the lot of outcomes from deploying or creating agents have been very positive. But when you want to productionize, you are actually looking at problem from a different lens. You are looking at the scale of the users, you are looking at scale of the data, and a lot of parameters that need to go right for primarily putting any application into a production. Now, if we look at agents, agents are the, if you have to make agents successful in production, you need to look at a lot of dimensions. So things like security. How are you authenticating your users that are coming in? Once you authenticate, how are you authorizing them? Because agents tend to call the APIs, they tend to call databases. You're primarily getting outside of your application boundary and trying to reach to different sources. And while doing that, you need to have right access privileges and right mechanisms. That's where authentication, authorization across boundaries of the system becomes important. And when you are deploying in production, these factors become a lot more important because the users that is coming into your system is completely unknown. And when you are dealing with an unknown entity, you need a lot of checks and balances. In the AI world, we called it guardrails, so that the inputs that are coming in, the outputs that are going out are properly checked and verified. So that is one part. Second part is obviously when you are increasing the scale, say you did a pilot for say 100 users or 20 users, and now you want to take it to thousands of users, the experiences that you need to cater to are completely different. So right from the latency, like right from the performance scale perspective, you need a system whereby it can scale automatically based on the users coming in, and the scale has to happen in a completely seamless manner. So if a user request exceeds in a millisecond, your system should also scale at the same rate and should be able to cater to those requests. So scaling becomes another important thing. Now, if you are scaling, there is a good chance that there is a conflict of what one user is making query versus what another user is making query, and their data getting inter served, where one session get isolated or overridden with another user session, and so on and so forth. So that's where again the security paradigm comes in, where you need to have session isolation, ensuring the number of users that you are dealing with, you are maintaining a separate session for each one of them, and you are able to recycle them at right juncture, not too early, not too late, so that if you do it too early, then you are losing the user context if the user comes back again within few minutes. If you are doing too late, then there is a chance of you needing to overload your resources, be it memory and compute, right? So that is the second factor. Then there are other factors like how do you ensure the users who are coming in, you provide a lot more contextual data. So all the interactions today that happens are extremely personalized and micro managed for a specific user based on their user preferences. So how do you ensure each user's preferences, be it short-term preferences or their long-term preferences or their historical conversations that would have happened with the system, are leveraged and catered to the user in such a manner that it is highly contextual, so that the user's experience is significantly increased. Then another thing that comes in is how do you make the complete system safe, secured, and observable, so that at no point of time you feel the system is not behaving in its own. Though the agentic systems are autonomous systems, but you need to have mechanisms whereby you are making those systems observable, and you are able to trace the outcomes or outputs of every stage of the process or every stage of the workflow, so that at any point of time, if you need to go back and check or verify the outcomes from each of the step, you are able to look at those traces, look at those details, be it through the prompts, be it through the output that your LLM is giving or an API is giving, and then give your justification of why certain things have happened. So all these things needs to be thought out, and there are a lot of things as we move along. Probably we'll touch upon those. They need to be thought out when you are building and a system for a production grade. When you're building something for POC grade, you are in very hurry. Typically, you choose a framework and you get going with it. But when you have to think from a production class system, you have to step back and at times rework your design principle, rework your choices, and start again and build it with the mindset of scale.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, lot of nuances for moving from pilots to production, I'm sure. And just to sort of summarize, you mentioned about security, you mentioned about the auto scaling and auto downscaling aspects of the infrastructure. You also mentioned about the user isolation, personalization, and you also talked about the observability of the agents, how and the decision it takes, the traces that can be that should be able one should be able to observe those and take appropriate actions on top of those. Sudhanshu, one topic that is of my personal interest is how I'm sure there are a lot of agents getting deployed within a business IT landscape or technology landscape. So how do you evaluate these agents? I mean, whether agent A is doing a fabulous job versus agent B or agent C, how do you evaluate that, and what are some metrics around?
Okay. So, see, again, this is a very important aspect when you are building agents. Typically, any system you evaluate based on how accurate the system. You typically have a ground truth data, and you'd look at some of the other aspect in terms of how you are evaluating that agent just from one or two dimensions. So, accuracy is typically a deterministic thing, and you'd use that as one dimension. Another dimension could be the toxicity, harmfulness, and other aspects in terms of how cleanly you are giving that information. So, toxicity means is the agent giving any toxic information based on the responses that it is doing, right? Similarly, how the agent is behaving from the helpfulness perspective, whether the agent is helpful, because a lot of user interactions that happen are user to the system, and since there is a user at the end of it, the customer, you want the interactions to be lot more human, the interaction to be lot more friendly and helpful. And you can use these metrics to figure out whether the interaction is helpful, faithful, the interaction is complete, because it is important to not just start the dialogue, but to see whether the interaction has been correct, interaction has been complete, what type of stereotyping involved in the interaction. Is it biased towards a particular thing, that it is always positive, or it is always negative on a particular topic? So that is important. So you should look at the stereotyping aspect of it. You should also look at the coherence aspect of it, right? How coherent the response is in terms of identifying the logical gaps and stuff like that.
Yeah, makes sense. Although these agents are autonomous, we are going into an area where they are taking the decisions, they are following the decision trees and paths, perform an objective. How much one should rely on these behavior of these agents, and what is needed sort of to ensure they remain safe, they remain responsible, because we are talking about deploying these agents in an business and enterprise environment. So all of these things become sort of non-negotiable in a way.
Absolutely. So see, agents are primarily non-deterministic in nature, and what it means is the input that you give, you will not necessarily get the same output. Unlike the traditional systems where you are doing an API call and you will get whatever the input has been, it was deterministic, right? So from that point of view, bringing in the human in the loop is very important, especially in the early stages of the system evolution, where at least certain sample of outputs you put through the human verification. That is one definite aspect. As I have mentioned earlier, observability aspects are very important. Time to time, you have to look at the drift, if there is a drift in the data, drift in the responses, and at what degree your system can tolerate those drifts, and at what degree it should create alarms for others to be notified. So that is important. The overall governance framework becomes very important in terms of how the agents are governed within the organization. What is the scope of decision making? To what extent you are making agents autonomous, and to what extent you need human involvement in those decisions? What type of use cases you are considering for autonomous behaviors, and what type of use cases you need human in the loop? That separation is important, and not all use cases will have human in the loop at highest threshold. So you'll have to see where at what threshold you need human involvement for that to get through. So these are some of the criterias and considerations you should look at while designing the agentic systems.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up for today, we always ask our guests to leave our listeners with one piece of practical advice. What would you like to share with them?
I think one of the important thing is I'm sure a lot of people have built agents, but now this industry has also reached to a point where a lot of these decisions can be revisited, be it selection of framework, selection of programming language, selection of underlying technology to write agents. And these decisions are important because from here you're going to build hundreds and thousands of agents within the enterprise, and you don't want to really get married to the choices that you may have done in last 1 year and want to continue because you have learned that technology, learned that framework, and you want to build on top of it. You should relook at some of those design choices, selections based on what is available currently in the industry, because this is a tipping point from where a lot of agents can be built, scaled, and deployed to harness the intelligence within the organization. So that is an important consideration that I would urge organizations and individuals to relook at and rework upon before they move forward on these things.
Sudhanshu, thank you so much for breaking this down. It's a very important and hot topic in this world. It was very actionable at the same time. It was very subtle and clear for our audience and to everyone who is listening. If this episode has helped you clarify how do you approach agent, do share it with your teams and peers. See you in the next episode. Thank you so much.